Where did civilization begin? Mesopotamia, we are told, which leads us back to the history of the Sumerians and the telling of the Anunnaki gods who descended to Earth and fashioned what we call modern man. And what did they believe? They believed that in ancient times, godlike beings descended from the sky and came to Earth. And that is what is the meaning of Anunnaki. Anunnaki means those who came from the sky and down to the earth. And that myth to us, history to them, tells a story of a race of beings that came from another planet called Nibiru. And this Nibiru is a planet that has an elliptical orbit, and it takes 3,600 years for it to go from, let's say, the inner solar system to the outer solar system and then back again. The problem for Earth is that every 3,000 years, Nibiru comes by and exerts a very powerful gravitational electromagnetic field upon the Earth, which causes devastation. And the most recent epic of the Anunnaki history regards the past 3,600 years and the re-establishment of human civilization after the last devastation, which is traditionally called the flood. Now, why did these gods, what I call aliens, come to Earth? When you read the works of Zecharia Sitchin, you realize from the Sumerian text that the inhabitants of Nibiru needed certain minerals that are on Earth in order to continue their civilization. Their planet is threatened by solar radiation, and the story goes that they needed gold in order to take the gold and transform it into a monatomic form in order to seed their atmosphere so that the gold would protect them from the harmful radiations of the sun as they do their 3,600 year transit. So they came to Earth looking for resources, and they found them. And they found them in the Middle East, and they found them in Africa, which is a mineral-rich continent. They assigned their crewmen to become the miners, and for a long time, the crewmen of the Anunnaki spaceships worked. They were called Igigi, I-G-I-G-I, Igigi. However, the Igigi grew weary. They had not signed on to become slaves mining in dark caves, and they rebelled. And when the rebellion occurred, there was a council of the Anunnaki, Enlil and Enki and the other so-called gods, the higher-ranking aliens. They decided to engineer another being as a slave being to do this kind of work. And so they engineered the first Adam. And there's a very detailed description of how the gods came together. Each contributed some part of his DNA and her DNA. There was a goddess who became the repository for this new life form. So each of the gods contributed some aspect of their DNA to make us more like them. And what is more like them? Knowing knowledge of good and evil, knowing life, knowing the existence of life and death and immortality. And so this is where we stand. We are only now finding out about human origins. And it is the problem that science has established itself as the new world religion and fears the revelation of these things. It fears the revelation of an antecedent civilization with higher technology than we possess today. It fears the moving of the cornerstone. Another cornerstone of science is evolutionary theory, which is a hypothesis. There's nothing proven about evolution or Darwinianism. Right? Something affected the course of humankind. For years and years, they call it the missing link. Missing link hasn't been found. Why? Because we're the missing link. That's what I believe. And that's what Zecharia Sitchin came to believe, because he translated the Sumerian tablets. He was a qualified scholar. He did years of work, and he wrote several books on this, and I recommend them to you if you want to know this in detail. He called the Earth the seventh planet. We call it the third planet now. Why did he call it the seventh planet? Because he was translating the Sumerian history and the Anunnaki description of the Earth. And since they came to the Earth from outside the solar system, they started counting the planets out there from Pluto inward. And if you count from Pluto inward, you find out that the Earth is the seventh planet in the Anunnaki scheme, although it is the third planet from the Sun in the way we see the solar system. I referred to Maurice Chatelain, who was an engineer with NASA. Maurice Chatelain was a genius, and he found in the Sumerian tablets a whole series of numbers, astronomically large numbers, numbers beyond even our modern need or comprehension. And so he started studying them, and what he found when he analyzed these numbers and divided them by 60, he found that they were the periods of the orbits of the planets, the orbits of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and so on, notated to the second. The Sumerians knew the orbital period of Jupiter and Mars, and they notated it in the number of seconds, not days, not hours, not years. They had it in seconds. And Maurice Chatelain discovered this in the late 1960s. And as I said, he was an engineer who worked for NASA, came across these documents, compared them, did his studies, and made this remarkable discovery. So how did the Sumerians know, and why did they need to know and calculate the orbits of Mars and Jupiter in seconds? Only people, beings that need to navigate amongst the planets, need to know how many seconds it takes Jupiter to orbit the Sun, or how many seconds it takes Mars to orbit the Sun. Obviously, in order to calculate and plot trajectories, intersections, interceptions, gravity slings. You do know that we know how to approach a planet and use the gravity of that planet to sling a spacecraft and accelerate it to another place. This has become an art form in our time, and apparently this is something that was known in ancient times as well.